Insects may have been here first, but it was man who was made in God's image, not you, creature. In the events of Bite, things go from pretty crappy already to possibly a marginally earned fate as one woman becomes bitten by some mysterious bug. Inducing a massive genetic shift within her body would begin breaking down in an effort to produce hundreds of thousands of eggs, all from one interaction. But this brings into question, what is the bug? Where did it come from? How was she altered in a way that she was? And what does that mean for humanity later on? Well, let's discuss all that in today's episode over the movie Bite. But first, this episode is sponsored by Incogni. Go to incogni.com/Roanoke and use code Roanoke to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/Roanoke and use code Roanoke or click link below to take your personal data off the market. Right now, much like me, because I just got an email from some random person who Google mapped my house that I haven't lived in for years, like several years, saying they were gonna come knock on my door. Please do! It was pretty hilarious. Anyways, people are acquiring and profiting off your data. Let's say you sign up for a newsletter or research some medical cases and you put in your email. Or maybe even your bank has a data breach, which appears to be happening more and more nowadays for some reason. Those sites can be hacked, and upon that happening, your information such as your name, address, shopping habits, social security number, phone number, and many other data points can get stolen and then sold to the highest bidder. Incogni does the messy work for you by finding these data brokers and then requesting that they delete all the information they have on you, which they are legally required to do. So if you're ready to take back and protect your personal private data today, then by going to incogni.com/Roanoke and using code Roanoke, you can get an exclusive offer of 60% off. Or click the link below and it'll take you there also. All right, let's get back to it. But as always, I want to thank you guys for watching. Join my Discord right now, you huge nerd, and we can all watch movies together on movie night, as, you know, that'll be discussed later, or at least the movies will be discussed later. I also have a gaming channel where I'm doing a playthrough of Space Marine 2. Links for both of those in the description. All right, let's get to it. We kick off our story on a plane, truly a testament to man's arrogance. These things shouldn't even exist. Then again, they say I'm a big baby for not getting on planes, and they're probably right. It be that way sometimes. As Shakes McKenzie with the low iron count over here is in charge of taking any footage seen, they get ready for the worst bachelorette trip I have ever seen. Getting to their room, they then head out to the bar as Casey orders, "I think I'll have a pina colada." Like, it seems like she did this like this the first time she's ever drank in her life. And then she's like, "I think we need shots." Yes, very human dialogue. Casey comes out of the bathroom screaming as there was a big bug in there. I mean, it is that way sometimes. Also, the camera keeps cutting out like, I don't know what sort of camera would do this. It's like Paranormal Activity-esque, but it just seems bizarre. Regardless, we aren't here to talk about cameras. We're here to talk about violent genetic shifts. That night, everyone has been day drinking all day, and at my big age, I'd be passed out by like 9 p.m. Once upon a time, I used to be cool. No, that's a lie. I didn't used to be cool. Meeting No Sleeves tank top combo at the bar, he's got the fiance in his sights as she's dancing with him. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that if you're in a committed relationship, is all I'm saying. Definitely time to bail out for the other fiance, or like, they're both fiance. Yes, the male fiance. So she has a freak out in the bathroom about if she's actually ready for marriage, as the other friend takes footage of herself. Alright then. Jill also mentions how her fiance is probably great in bed. Casey's fiance. Man, what a thing to say unprompted. So the next morning, Sleeveless Boy over here tells them about a part of the island that is locals only and is pretty, where there's white sands and crystal clear water. He then draws them a Slender Man map as they head back there. Again, allegedly, white sands and crystal clear water, right? Getting to it, it's dirty pond water and broken beer bottles in the rocks. That's probably more on point. So you're telling me Tank Top Man wasn't reputable? Wild. Getting in the sand, Kristen finds these weird egg things as Casey gets bit by something, with Jill telling her that she needs to tell Jared about what happened. Lots of names going on here, but there's like 4 people in this whole movie. Casey says she will begrudgingly tell him as Jill then goes under the water. Casey gets out as they leave Jill to a grisly fate. Just kidding, Jill pops back up, and Casey then says that she has, well, it's just a little bite as a massive title card comes up. Ooh, spooky. So Casey now heads home, hopping in the shower first. We all know what that means, but she didn't do that. Jared has come home to see her, which she's surprised about, and she says she doesn't know where to begin about her trip, as Jared says he has a surprise. Well, Casey, you could probably start with your infidelity, but leading her inside, it's his offspring chair from when he was little, which is also his father's. Alright then, man, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a bit odd considering y'all haven't even put Percy in the playpen yet. Like, I get y'all are getting married, and that's great if everybody else wants to wait, but you need to crawl before you sprint sort of scenario. He then gets a call on work day, and surprise, it's work, which she gets upset about. Like, Casey, you didn't even know he was taking off work today. Are you serious? Also, she lost her ring. Unpacking her crap as she pulls out photos showing her infidelity. Why would you bring that home? We will learn more later about, like, how this guy's a douche, but up until a certain point, it was still like an emotional affair. She just blows.
What do you mean by that?
So getting in the tub, she's got monkeypox all over herself, not a great sign of the trip. Her friend then says it's annoying that Jared is still working on a work day, so I guess we all just exist in a fun-filled world where we all receive resources for doing absolutely nothing. Okay then, so Kristen goes on to say that she shouldn't get cold feet because of some weirdo on the trip. No, but you should get cold feet because of your emotional infidelity. Just saying. Well, you shouldn't have been letting that dude all over you either. Anyways, so we're sort of at an impasse here. We're just gonna move on. So she runs out of detergents and goes to the one place that she knows she can get detergent, not the store, but Jared's mother. Great plan. She loves you. The future mother-in-law is always so kind and thoughtful. I think I'd rather just go to the store. The laundry can wait just an hour sitting there. Approaching the mother-in-law turned landlord's door, she says a woman doesn't run out of detergent. Casey hasn't called the caterer, the florist, gotten the dress alterations done. Why the mother-in-law would know any of this is beyond me. Why is she doesn't just tell her parents? I have no idea. Like, dog, evidently it's supposed to be like a week before they're supposed to get married also. If they haven't done any of that yet, it's not happening. So getting her lecture, she now heads back home to view the footage of the party where she sees what happened between her and the dude. Again, yeesh. Heading to her neighbor's house to walk the dog, she talks about how it was exhausting as she heads out to go walk the quadruped, who seems a little bit unsure about what's going on. Also, wherever this gal lives, it's very pretty. So also, there's snow on the ground, right? If I remember correctly, the flight at the beginning says it was only 462 miles away from where they were taking off. Where did she go that you can get from this area with snow to a tropical paradise that is not dealing with the same climate? Am I looking too much into that? You bet your ass I am. Anyways, Casey then calls her friend to get a pep talk on telling her fiance the truth, which she should have done already, like the moment she got home. So as he comes home, she can hear his mom talking mad smack about her. The mom suggests Casey has cheated and how she's not good for him. Well, yes, I'm still not really sure how she's already come to that conclusion. So the conversation sounds like it's just outside the door, and as the dude approaches the door, it's like 3 years away that he is. It's because she has super hearing now. Hearing a bang on the door, he was actually just knocking normally, but it seemed loud. Migraine powers activate. Heading inside, he then talks about the office as he starts eating, and she can hear all of it. Misophonia, activate. She starts getting the ick hardcore as he asks about her ring. She says, oh, I was just cleaning it, but we need to talk. Just then, her stomach starts going into triple overdrive from the quarter pounder with cheese she ate earlier, and she starts throwing up the oily spaghetti. See, the key is to use butter, not vegetable oil, for the desired effect. Jared then takes her to bed so that she can get some rest as she asks him to stay, but he has every badge in Boy Scouts, so you know he won't stay. He's pure. He also says he won't because his mom owns the building, and I cannot think of anything less that would make me be with like my significant other, my parents in the house. Who cares? But he says after, we get married, we'll leave. Bro just tags some walls, so they kiss, and after she just threw up the oily spaghetti, which is it's pretty gross, immediately he goes into it, which leads me to believe this is not a first for him. Like, that was too easy. So you're telling me they never went on like a trip together or had to stay at a hotel because of going to like a friend's wedding or something, that they didn't just hook up? I don't know, man. There's a point when you just need to cut the umbilical cord from your parents, and your late 20s is a little late to be doing that. So they start making out after she just threw up, and I need to impress upon you how gross that is. He may never recover. I too have had moments like that in college where I narrowly avoided a similar fate. I call it the signs intervention. Also, the infected sore on her leg looks pretty tasty. So as they start getting hot and heavy, he makes an egregious error, then grabs that thing as it pops. Would that be a happy ending or not? I don't think it counts. Embarrassed, she then runs to go get dressed, and this is not the first time this man will suffer some extreme blue orbs, as we'll call them. She says she's fine, and she has some cream for it, and look, if it's anything less than antibiotic ointment, then it ain't gonna work. She then kicks him out before his mom notices that he's there, which what is she really gonna do? And we also know what bro went and did after all this. Extreme times call for extreme measures. So she runs a bath to let water sit on her infected wound, and also so she can sit in the infected wound water. Seriously, baths are really gross. Like, just take a shower. The next morning, having been in the tub all night, she wakes up somehow not drowned. Interesting, as she rinses off the oily goop. So here we see the next set of extreme changes to her physiology. The first symptomatic change would be how she was having super hearing, which she did take notice of earlier. Assuming her fiance to be just outside the door, she noticed it took a long time for him to get there, and along with that, him knocking on the door would ultimately be extremely loud. This would indicate that the hair cells within the ear have increased in large amounts, but also the sensitivity to the actual sound increasing, not only like the range that she can hear, but also the distance that she can hear as well. This may also indicate neurological changes, which will become more profound later. The temporal lobe, which is responsible for interpreting sound signals, which also hilariously is responsible for tinnitus, as when we don't receive sound from the hair cells, it's like, oh, I guess we just hear a horrific ringing noise. Sweet. The brain sure does enjoy pranks on itself. Anyhow, so this indicates its neurological changes, but obviously existing in the water the entire night is something else entirely. While she does clearly still breathe oxygen, it's clear to me she must now have the ability to form some sort of internal gills, potentially working alongside the lungs in order to get oxygen from the water itself. This aquatic ability would be exceedingly strange, but considering the insect earlier appeared to be aquatic in nature, or at least when it entered its reproductive phase, it would still track. Now, this does possibly hint at something that's pretty strange. What sort of insect is this that has the ability to do that? If you had to ask me, which I'm the one making this video, so I guess you have no choice but to ask me, it seems like this species is not from this planet. I know, it's pretty obvious, right? But you have to stop and ask yourself, what animal can bite a human and then at first produce these changes and then worse ones later on? A species that is trying to forcefully adapt a host in order to produce its offspring. Sort of like building a house to the specifications of the climate before having kids. You wouldn't build like a beach house with the insulation that it has in the Arctic sort of scenario. So this clearly indicates to me that this is an invasive species that very likely does not hail from Earth, and if it does, how none of the locals would have already been afflicted with this disease prior would not be possible. This means that whatever was in the water, which is a bug, recently arrived to the area, and Casey just happened to be one of the first few bitten. I say one of the first few because the eggs already lining the dirty pond water were already there, indicating some locals may have initially come into contact with the insect, but this was not a widespread issue as of yet. So hearing a knock on the door, Jill shows up. Oh, thank God, the friend's here. Jill tells her about her diarrhea. No lie, that's in the movie. I mean, nobody asked, but thanks, gal. What's the old saying? If you're climbing up a ladder and you feel something splatter? Anyway, so she asks if Casey told Jared or not, but she has not. Jill then talks up Jared for a while and then says Casey just isn't ready for marriage, but he is. As she hugs her, one of her bug bites evidently hurts. Jill then gives Casey cream for her wounds. Maybe just use some triple antibiotic ointment instead. I don't know. Could be possibility. How is this not common knowledge? But we are about to find out when she calls Doctors R Us, it's apparently not. Meanwhile, back in the camera footage that we keep getting subjected to, Jill wakes up Kristen as they find Casey is out on the beach alone. They wake her up and apparently all her clothes were missing. Great friends! Casey, having been awoken, finds that all of her stuff is missing. She can't remember the night before, and I'm just saying, this is why you don't associate with losers, that would be my advice. More so with sleeveless tank top combo. Snap back to reality, Casey eats some bread. She immediately pukes up some more oil. Someone get this girl a sponsorship from British Petroleum, as Casey heads downstairs to walk the quadruped that wants nothing to do with her. Casey now calls up Kristen saying she needs to tell Jared, but really, she's there just to ask how she feels as of late. Kristen says not great, but apparently she's not bitten by a mystery bug bad. Kristen then asks if, Casey, are you pregnant? But for some reason, Casey's like, no, that's impossible. There's no way I could be. But how do you know? So she takes a test and then she leaves the room, and she's just sort of pacing around. I mean, it'll still tell you, even if you're in the same room as it, you don't have to leave. So she walks to the mirror as she notices that nice growth on her leg, and squeezing that bad boy, some local honey comes out as she cleans it in the worst way possible in the bathtub. See, you pour the hydrogen peroxide on the wound to rinse it out. You don't just rub it with a dirty rag that you find lying around. So looking up after her freak out, she finds the Preganinant test says that she is indeed pregnant. Whoops. So she then calls up, I'm guessing a doctor of some sort, who tells her to put on some steroid cream, his words, which will kill the infection. Okay, full stop. No, it will not. In fact, a steroid in the area of a wound will decrease the effectiveness of the body's ability to fight an infection. Now, invariably, there's going to be someone who's like, well, we give, steroids for infections all the time. So obviously steroids are good. Steroids decrease inflammation, which is great, but the issue is if you decrease macrophage reactivity, there's a problem. It's a similar idea to how people say having a fever is evidently bad. That is not true. A fever is a massively important part of actually fighting an infection, as it makes the body less viable of a location for infection to take place. This is accomplished by bacteria not being able to efficiently survive in the area and viruses not replicating as well due to your own cells not operating as efficiently. Now, this is just my layman's perspective, obviously, and not for everyone, but I'll typically let a fever go for about 2 days before trying to treat it at all. Obviously, if it's like 104 degrees, you need to be a little wary about that. But if it's like 101 or 102 degrees, drink some water, drink some electrolytes, eat some food, and rest. Let the fever do its job. Also, do not just slap a steroid cream on an open wound. You need to clear that bad boy of any bacteria first. Anyways, so with that 101 done and the horrible information given by that doctor, she then randomly tells this dude, she's like, one more thing, I'm pregnant. It doesn't really get his reaction, but I'm sure the dude was like, cool. Anyways, so get that wound cleaned out. Returning from the store, she then throws up more oil, but what is in the toilet looks horrific. Like, there was something already there, and then she's gross. So she calls another doctor's office, but gets the voicemail. Okay, so have you ever heard of an urgent care or the emergency room? Seriously, why not go to one of those? I know people will be like, well, it's expensive. It is expensive. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Anyways, falling asleep, she then wakes up that night and hears whispering. Heading outside her room, all of her friends and family are there as they start chanting babies, as then a bunch of eggs come out of her, and then they start stomping those bad boys. So the jello is being turned into mush, and I was just informed, apparently pregnant women dream about fish before they knew they were pregnant. I think there's like 100,000 women on this channel, allegedly, according to my analytics. One of you has got to have been pregnant at one time in your life. Did you dream about fish? Okay, so leaving the bathtub where she fell asleep again, which is definitely indicating she has internal structures changing, obviously. She walks out, and it's hilarious because the ground is already wet from, I imagine, previous takes. And as she pulls back the blanket on her bed, it's filled with eggs. Maybe it was wet though because she was sleep birthing. I don't know. She looks in the mirror and then sees her wounds are looking a little worse for wear, and now she is also growing a tail. Hearing a knock on the door, her whole apartment is pretty much eggified. You're not hiding that. Her mother-in-law is there banging on the door, looking for her as she pulls an illegal maneuver by opening the door when she wasn't invited in. Landlords aren't allowed to do that. Also, continuity error. She was wearing a dress when she got out of the tub and then checked her face, but when she comes out of the room, she's only wearing underwear, and then she goes to put the dress on again, and then she sees her wounds are progressing, but not just damage. Her body is actually changing as she's going full-on insect mode. The mother-in-law then enters, finding the Preganinant test on the Davenport, which is definitely not a Davenport, as she steps on some of the eggs. Casey asks why she's even there, as the mother-in-law says, I know you're cheating and you shouldn't be with my son. Casey tells her to leave, but she kind of stands her ground, accusing her even further, as then Casey begins her attack now. Evidently, she can spit up acid that melts faces. Okay, so clearly we see this infection is a progression corrupting the genetics of a person in some ways, but potentially activating long dormant genes as well. According to the theory of evolution, as we all know, the progenitor of all life is a cell. Thanks for watching. No, it's a cell, but the cell created a multicellular organism, which then went on to become a fish, which then left the waters to become land-dwelling, which then those land-dwellers became you, and now you're sitting here listening to another version of your great second removed cousin, which is me. Anyways, all throughout time, buried deep in the genes of animals, are features from other species due to the progression of life. In humans, for instance, this would be a tail. Going back to our much hairier days when we were swinging around in trees, a prehensile tail was all the rage. In this way, the genes to create this tail are activated. We see tails can sometimes form on humans anyways during gestation, but typically they're cut off after birth because who needs a tail? Those are so 2.5 million year BC. Now, this gene activation may also extend to potentially gills forming, but take that with a grain of salt, as I imagine those genes are long gone. However, what could be happening is the genes of the actual insect are transferring to the person. This process would be known as a horizontal gene transfer. We know with viruses, for instance, that upon infecting a person, RNA can actually engage in horizontal gene transfer once it's turned into DNA, which then creates functionally and significant new changes to genes that can be expressed. Sometimes those just become cancer though, so that's not really amazing, but the question is, how does this species engage in this? Well, clearly because of its assumed non-Earth status, it infects hosts with not just a massive amount of eggs, which would clearly have to be microscopic that then grow within the host, but they would also possess an enzyme. These enzymes enter the cell where a packet of DNA may be attached as well. The insect would need to form a type of DNA polymerase, which typically has the responsibility of adding new nucleotides. However, in this case, the genome would be snipped and then a new gene loci would be added. This gene loci would be responsible for inducing new genetic structures in order to form a new adaptation for the host. And this would allow for actually the fitness of the host to increase in that area, thus allowing for the insect's eggs to have a better chance at survival. And because of this evolutionary trait alteration would be of great value to the insects, as quite clearly this has allowed them to thrive to the point of surviving on their world or wherever that they come from, and then also surviving on Earth. It could also be assumed that whatever packet of DNA the enzyme arrives with, it must also have the ability to switch on and off genes, which is probably the same enzyme as well as human DNA. Either that, or within that packet, there is now a new enzyme created that can then turn genes on and off. This is pretty much supported by the fact that, as we will see here momentarily, the behavior of Casey is profoundly impacted, and when you start switching on and off genes within the actual neurons of your brain, you can have some pretty bad down the road impacts. Anyways, so now with her mother-in-law down for the count, she does the logical thing and then just dumps her in the bathtub, but fills it up first. We also see her eggs now have almost fully grown bugs in it, as then she clicks at it This is her brain starting to change. This indicates that her DNA is not present in the insects at all. They're really just their own species. However, it does show still that her own genetics have been severely altered by the infection of this insectoid species. Looking in the mirror once more, she's definitely tweaking as she yells and breaks the mirror because she's gaining powers. Fiance of the Year now calls Casey saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a couple of days and I only live 50 feet away." Bro, really? Look, I'm only dating and consistently, I always ask what we're doing for dinner. If that girl doesn't answer her phone or something within 18 hours, I'm probably gonna be going over there, knocking on her door like, "Hey, you still alive over here?" I don't know, maybe that's just me. So he does finally decide to do that because after evidently 4 days, wasn't his mother gone too? And he didn't notice that either? They're apparently really close. So Casey tells him to go away and she can't do it, the wedding that is. She tells him that he needs to get out of here and that she just needs, I just need some time to figure it out. Okay, anybody watching this is some information from Papa Roanoke. Anybody ever tells you they just need some time to figure things out? You need to bail. Like yesterday you need to bail. And the reason for that is there's somebody else that they're thinking about typically. So they need to see if that's gonna work. And if not, they're gonna go with the backup. So don't be the backup, just bail. So anyways, she pulls out some of her hair as he decides to leave begrudgingly. Also, I guess in this one instance of being infected by an alien superbug, maybe she had something else going on, but that's the whole point. So she tweaks in the corner for a bit while he pours himself a drink. I guess there's other instances. There's probably other instances. It just means they don't want to be with you. Okay, so he pours himself a drink and he has a nice yell about this. And nice dude, you have to clean that up now, as Kristen now heads over to Jill's to talk about how she's avoiding her. Kristen then says this is all their fault, as Jill says, "I didn't sign up to be a babysitter." Jill is technically right. Jill's not a great person, but she's technically right. So Kristen says that she's worried, as then she went by but smelled something was off. Also, I guess what we're gonna see later, Jill just kind of sucks. By its own merit, it would have been right. But now, in a minute, you're gonna see, oh, Jill, you just kind of suck. No. So anyways, Kristen then calls Jill a sleut and then nopes out of there while Jill drinks alone. Classic. She also has Casey's ring, so she was there. At least she knows what happened. She robbed her. So back at the insect bungalow, Casey is just sort of vibing out with her egg babies as she's spitting up eggs. It appears as though the insect race congregates specifically in the digestive tract of Casey. Traveling through the bloodstream, they would then latch onto the actual intestines and then draw nutrients from whatever she's eating. Eventually though, as we will see, she cannot eat as they have evidently filled her entire stomach, existing within the acid that she creates. This acid is likely modified concerning a form of stomach acid, seeing as it can burn away faces, and this indicates that no cell is untouched and specific cellular functions are altered but still run in the same vein as before. So stomach cells altered create stronger acid, muscular cells will contract harder, hair cells in the ear become more sensitive, brain cells become one more track towards survival of the eggs. She then pulls off a fingernail as her whole body is falling apart, and this is clearly due to the strain that is put on her body by the egg growth, which she assumedly hasn't really eaten. She may be eating bugs, but the caloric requirements would be immense to grow this many eggs. She then engages in some girl dinner, starting with her own fingernail, before then finding a roach and chowing down. Girl dinner. Also, her eyes have lost all of their pigmentation, further highlighting the struggle her body is having keeping up with the demands of this many eggs. Having super hearing, she then hears a car show up, but not the other car that shows up, specifically Kristen's car that shows up. She knocks on Casey's door, telling her to open up as she breaks in by sliding a card. Horrific security in this place. Entering a terrible scene, I would immediately be leaving. The smell alone must be god-awful. As she calls out to Casey, there is no answer. She makes her way towards the bathroom before Casey finally tells her not to go in there. Kristen asks what happened, as she then is completely unaware of the situation around her as she hugs Casey. She says that she can help her as one of the eggs then starts moving. Kristen then finally sees Casey's face and backs away like this was the delineating thing. Like, bro, how did you not notice this earlier? She then locks herself in the bathroom where she finds the mother-in-law and then drops her phone in there. She's not getting that. Your cue to leave the apartment was when you first entered. Your cue to break the window, get out now, is right now. So Casey then breaks through the door and then Nickelodeon blue slimes her on the mouth, which apparently creates a seal that suffocates her inside of 12 seconds. Sick. She then spoons her friend as we jump over to he went to Jared. Actually, he should have gone to the hospital because he's peeing blood, which is usually a sign of bladder cancer. If you ever pee blood and you haven't drank beet juice, it's time to go to the hospital. So he checks his phone as he got a text from Jill saying to meet her. I guess you could say she went to Jared. Okay. Being a single man at this point, I mean, sure, why not? Casey then starts scratching the walls as Jill shows Jared footage of Casey cheating. He asks if she slept with him and Jill says that she did. So Jill makes a move on Jared, which turns hot and heavy pretty quickly. Jill was a part of it the whole time. So Casey listens to this thing happening just outside, which is like a ridiculous amount of ability to hone in on just one thing rather than all the other noises taking place around you. So with all the movement going on, Jill throws up as Jared throws up too. Evidently, because she screams, they are connected to her. I actually really couldn't figure out what was going on with this or what they're even trying to suggest here. Either her yelling is what caused them both to puke, indicating she now has some sort of psychic ability, or they realize the gravity of their depravity and then both just throw up. This is sort of like when you were a youngling and you were playing with other younglings and one of them kept saying that like they would make up superpowers just to counter your powers. That's literally this movie. Also, this is the second time Jared has gotten hot and heavy but didn't finish the task at hand. That's got to start getting really painful here pretty soon. Casey is now super upset and wants revenge. Jill has a freak out in her vehicle, having missed her chance with the Jared himself. Jared, meanwhile, looks at pictures. Jill now heads to Casey's apartment to check on her, and opening the door, she sees the room is really gross. Time to turn around and leave. Finding the wall is leaking, she then heads to the back bedroom and finds Kristen hung up on the wall. Casey now injects her as she pukes up this white stuff. No idea what that is. Jared keeps drinking, looking in the mirror. We've all had one of those nights, as Jill wakes back up and finding she's been spewed to a chair. She asks what happened to Casey, as I think Casey isn't really the same person anymore. Casey, looking like my 50-year-old gym teacher in 2006, plays the footage for Jill, which shows she could have stepped in and helped, but didn't. What a crappy friend. So Casey's upset at this, as now her spit is like acid as well. And again, I would have to assume this is just altered stomach acid. I mean, saliva does contain a small amount of acid, but nothing compared to the stomach. So unless those cells have been altered similarly, it shouldn't burn that much. Casey then accuses Jill of wanting Jared, and she says she heard their interaction. Casey tells her to call Jared, as then she spits fluid in her mouth. Oh my God, gross. Jill then calls out to Jared, who hears it as he runs down the hallway. So nobody in the entire apartment complex is hearing this, like at all. Gotcha. Jared approaches the door and then runs in, finding Jill. Jill tells Jared Casey is a monster and appears behind him. Oh, good Lord, that's a lot of names. She then corners Jared and then she asks, do you think I'm still pretty? Look, Al, this dude is like just completely confused. Like, if we look at the timeline, this man has done nothing. His fiance just broke up with him. All he was trying to do was just have a good future with her. And she's like, do you think I'm still pretty? Like, bro, you're the villain. Like, this guy did nothing. So Casey slashes Jill's throat as she jumps on Jared, but he yeets her off of her, but he stops because then she starts lying, saying she wants help, as then she stabs him in the side with her tail. Ouchies. He then grabs a piece of wood and spears her through the chest before going absolutely monkey mode on her head, taking her out. Well, that's definitely one way to end it. Leaving the apartment because that's going to require some therapy, he then heads inside of his own apartment before falling down. He assumedly calls 911 before passing out. It is now, though, 1 week later. Evidently, he did not call 911, and a bunch of extras stand outside pointing at the building. Presumably, we have a biohazard situation here, right? We have some BSL-2 suits, which are the classic, you know, just gonna protect yourself, maybe a little bit of a breathing apparatus, some goggles perhaps. Then we have cops in regular uniforms, okay, and then BSL-4 suits show up. Which is it? If it's a BSL-4 situation, there is no shot that cops are just walking around in a normal situation. Assumedly, the BSL-2 guys, which is biosafety level 2, are already with the cops. They would probably tell the cops, hey guys, you don't need to go in there. This is a biohazard situation, but they're all just in there. Like, I could see BSL-4 showing up and being like, actually, this is a real issue. All those cops are screwed. Anyways, they open up Jared's apartment after finding the mother-in-law and then find Jared not looking so hot. He tells them to get out, but then his stomach hatches and bugs fly out. See, digestive system is at play. Later on, two women are running and talking about Costa Rica, and then one's like going on and on about, oh, you need to wear sunscreen. Like, nobody's ever heard of sunscreen before. So then one of the women gets bitten by a giant bug. She then smashes it, as then the other asks like, oh, are you okay? And she says, yeah, it was just a little bite. Title card thus concludes Bite. This insect in no way hails from Earth, and for several reasons that I have outlined. First, the genetic alterations to the host from a simple bug bite would assumedly mean it can affect any host at any time, ruining long-established evolutionary genetics. Along with it, this type of insect has the potential to just overwhelm a native ecosystem, and really any ecosystem, which would classify it as an invasive species from the drop. These things cannot coexist with the current state of our world. So the third reasoning, trust me, there was a second reasoning in there. The only animal I know of that can give birth through the mouth is the mouth-brooding frog. Humans would not be able to accomplish this task, and assumedly, she's also giving birth the old-fashioned way, meaning really these creatures are just coming out of any orifice they can, which is probably why Jared was peeing blood. And again, the whole genetic tampering issue, these things are not, they just cannot coexist with the current state of our world. So all of this indicates to me that this species is, in fact, 100% alien. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, leave me a like, ball review, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. Do you believe this species was alien in origin, or are you just a huge nerd? Be a cool guy and let me know down in the comments. I'll drop up my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and Ronan Games channel, link in the description. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer, and Feather. Thank you guys. Next, I'd like to thank our scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Lucian Dragon, Metric System, and Scoot Boo. And of course, last but not least, Virix Hellstrom. And to the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support as well. It goes a long way towards helping out, and you are absolutely cool in my book. All right, that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.